Hello everybody, it's Alex and Tuna here. I'm going to go over a video of a banquette with some tufting. Now over the years, tufting has always been a challenge for me, creating a natural look and not so CG. I always used like complicated methods back then. I would try to use a texture and it would never feel right. I would try to use the texture with a bump map and displacement and it never felt right. And I felt Zbrush would kind of push that a little bit further. And as I developed a technique for getting this, it seemed to get easier inside of Zbrush to do it. Using sculpting tools and poly modeling in combination. So right now what you're seeing on the video is I'm kind of simplifying the model. Revit geometry is never as clean as you like it to be, and if you try to model on it, it's not as fun in the end, and you'll probably have a bigger headache trying to use it. Right here on the box model, I'm putting edge loops so that I can kind of get the cushion in place. And what I'll do is push the center polygons just to give it a little cushion, softer feel. If you don't do this, sometimes I personally feel that it doesn't feel comfortable. And when you see it in the rendering, your eye will point it out, your brain will point it out. We're moving on to the back of the seating, and I love ZBrush for the candy striped poly grouping. This helps see your model a little clearer. It helps you kind of visualize a little bit easier. I wish more other programs did this. So we're going to split the points on the vertice, making an X pattern just about. And you can look at the little reference on the bottom left. It's that pattern that you want to follow, or depending on what you're modeling, to get as close as what you originally need to get. For some reason, they didn't do polygroups in the center of the split points, and I had to go back and make my own polygroups and extrude it back in. And it's okay. It's probably a button that I didn't press or something, but it usually makes polygroups. You want to put the split points on the edge too, even though it seems kind of awkward, but you're going to put buttons there too. A lot of the tufting on the top left yellow one, there's buttons on the side. The other one at the bottom, the other reference, you can see it just kind of dies off and it's a hard edge. But I wanted to kind of give all-rounded feeling, because you might see it from the other side and it wouldn't register. The buttons will go in the center, and I use a basic model cylinder, make a little detail on it, and I'll smooth it out when I put it in the center of these poly groups. So I'm trying to push them back a little bit deeper. As you can see, you got a base model, and it's clear to read. It's not so complicated. It doesn't look like much right now, but as soon as we start pushing and pulling vertices and points, it'll seem to come together in the end. And right here, pushing and pulling the center points of the cushion, it starts to come to life. You can see a little bit of that coming out, and we're going to keep doing this process. The sculpting doesn't come until the end, and that's where you start getting the look. Right now we're just trying to get a base model, something comfortable to work with, and if we need to export it, it's clean. And you can actually make a decent export out of ZBrush into your program, whether it be 3D Max, Blender, Maya, or anything else, or even Unreal. We're about to put the buttons in, and it's okay to have imperfections. This part of the process, it's good to have imperfections so that it looks natural. If you have, I feel like in computer generated scenes, too many things are too perfect, and there's not enough chaos in some of the things we see. So it's okay right now, and that's what I like about ZBrush, is that when you're sculpting, nothing's perfect in there, and it feels natural sometimes. And whenever you do poly modeling, it's almost too perfect, and then you need to push that imbalance there a little bit more. Don't let the computer hold your hand so much, but let it do a lot of the work, but then you kind of like offset that at the same time. So using the button, I use a basic insert mesh, and I'm gonna use this for kind of keeping a visual. This helps to put this in now so that whenever you start to sculpt on the model, you can actually see where the lines need to be and where the seams need to be on your model. Snapping those in place. And we'll split it off in a bit, but right now we're getting them put in place. And this is another process that doesn't have to be, they need to be the same scale, do that, but they don't need to be aligned perfectly, because another part of CG look is making it not make it look CG-ish. Randomize it. You got to randomize things. Yeah, I'm using symmetry, but as long as you kind of vary the other ones, your eye will play off of that. So now we have like a base model to work with. We're going to kind of fit it into this geometry here so it's not so small. It's okay. And using the damn standard and cutting your fabric down, now you can start to see the divisions of your model. Or even just, if you have a reference up, I put the reference away on this, but you'll follow the reference and you can see where the tufting starts to cut. You're just going to start subdividing it and then sculpting. So now we got a base model with a little bit of sculpting on it. What we're going to do is start pushing this a little bit further. As you can see, it's starting to be a little more sculpting than poly modeling. Using the damn standard, I like to kind of cut in a little bit. It's a little bit of everything. I use the /2 brush. I also use the damn standard. I'll use the standard brush to kind of get the edges a little bit more defined, and going back and forth. Sometimes you'll need to subdivide, sometimes you'll need to crease it, sometimes you'll push and pull, but as you start looking at it, it'll start to come together. And as we start putting more folds on this model, it'll start to show that tufted feel, and from a distance it'll read. And depending on how you plan on using this, you'll see that either you need to put more subdivision and more sculpting folds into it, but it depends on the style. There's so many different variations of tufted seats, and that's a tricky thing about it, is that if your client or whoever needs that furniture and they're like, well, that tufting is too light, and then you're like, well, this is the model I bought off of Turbo Squid and I can't find that one. You know, if you have to model it, then this is probably the closest way you'll get to that reference or that selected furniture. Putting the /2 brush cuts gives it that folded feeling. Going from each part of the triangle, or not the triangle, but the square. Sorry, so trying to wake up. Gives it a little bit of folds, and you can see it starting to come to life. And that's from a basic box that you started, and then you just go from there. And this is a real fun exercise. Sometimes I feel like it's almost calming in a way that I find that it's just one of those processes that you make something come to life as you do it, and it's furniture. And you're like, oh, cool. So the other thing is the center of the cushion, or the tufted part. sometimes it's not pulled out enough. So I'll use a standard brush and I'll use a fall off on it, and I'll kind of pull that out a little bit more. So you can see I'm cutting. A lot of this process is just going back over what you got and making it work. Looking at it now, it doesn't look so much like the original box we started with. You've got something to play with on here. And over the past years, I wish I'd kind of used this technique over the years, but as you get older, you learn techniques and you learn things. And ZBrush, I was still always playing with and trying to figure out there's got to be a way to do this easier, and this method for me seems to be fairly quick. I don't think it takes as long as it used to. This if you were to do this in 3D Max, I don't really know how long it would take. Now, you know, even with this version of 3D Max, how would you get to this point this quickly in a program other than ZBrush? So the inflate, if you do the inflate around those little buttons, sometimes that helps too. That's what I'm doing, trying to hug those buttons to make it a little bit more, you know, there you go. You could probably do the inflate on the center of the areas to push them to be a little bit more puffed out, but it really depends on the style that you're going for. And that's what this has kind of come around to. This is kind of an example. I don't show the full process of this in this video. It's just more or less this part of it. The final one I actually export into Unreal. Well, I'll put it in 3D Max just to get it unwrapped and everything else, to make sure the wrapping is okay. And I actually use, I want to say that I used ZBrush to unwrap it and kind of get the texturing going. But right here, I'm using the move tool to kind of push it and pull. And feel free to be creative with it. You can see that it's got an organic feel. That's what I kind of like about this type of furniture, is that it's organic at the same time it's furniture. It's got a life of its own, and that helps. Pushing the buttons, and the buttons, you can do whatever you want. You can make the buttons a little more detailed than what I did, but for this example, this is what I needed, and for whatever reason, you can make it as poofy or whatever you want, or depends on how you want it to model. But it's your playground, whatever you want to make it feel like. And right here, here's the, so I use an alpha round gradient, and I do the drag on the standard to get this to make it a little bit more poofy. So now you can see that I'm pushing it out more, just randomly pushing, and see now it doesn't look so flat. You're starting to pull it out little by little, and you can do this as much as you want or as little as you want. But yeah, this is about most of the video. Other than that, the bottom model, you can add more detail, and you can use probably some of these techniques that you used on the tufting on that. But for this video, I hope it was informative. I hope you learned something. I know I'm always learning something when I do these models, and it's always a fun process, but that's part of it. But I appreciate you watching. If you have any comments, leave them at the bottom. I'll try to answer them. Hopefully I have everything that you need in this video, but you know, never know. Sometimes I'll forget to add something or whatever. So Thanks again for watching.